What if I told you there's an AI tool that doesn't just generate code snippets, but actually understands your entire project context, follows your existing workflows, and can build complete applications without breaking your code base? Hey developers, my name is Dan Vega, and I'm excited to show you something that's genuinely changed the way I approach coding projects. This is Claude Code, and no, this isn't another chatbot that spits out random code snippets that you have to debug for hours. Claude Code is an agentic command line tool that works like having an experienced pair programmer who actually understands your project structure, respects your existing workflows, and can execute complex development tasks from start to finish. Today, I'm going to give you a complete introduction to Claude Code from a developer's perspective. We'll dive into the documentation, then jump straight into building a real Spring Boot application. Now, if you're not using Java or Spring, don't worry, this applies to whatever language or framework you're using. I'll show you the smart way to use it, not starting from scratch, but integrating it with the tools you already know and love, like start.spring.io. We'll explore planning mode, which is really big. I love this feature. How to use branching to protect your code base, and a little workflow optimization that makes this tool incredibly powerful for real development work. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why Claude Code has become an essential part of my development toolkit. What are we waiting for? Let's dive on in. All right, so here we are over on the website, the documentation. So anthropic.com/Claude Code. You can read more about it here. Your code's new collaborator. So you can go in and there's a really good introduction video from the team there. You can get a little bit more information. The other really cool thing is that this is a command line tool, but it also integrates with your IDEs. So if you're using something like IntelliJ and you want to use it inside of there, perfect. If you're using something like VS Code with, say, Cursor or Windsurf, it integrates there as well. I found these to be like a really great combination. And some of your favorite command line tools, what can you do? I want to just get into, so pricing. Pricing is a big thing. When I first started using Claude Code, I was using it via the API. I already fell in love with it, but I found out quickly that it was costing a lot. Recently, they switched over, and now if you're a part of one of the plans, you get access to Claude Code. So Claude Code is included in your Pro plan. It's also included in your Max plan. Depending on what you're doing. Now, I write some simple demos. I write some side projects, things like that. Pro has worked out fine for me. If I was writing code like I was 10 years ago, then I would probably be paying for one of these higher plans because you will run out of limits if you write a ton of code on the Pro plan. Just something to think about, but much cheaper than it was using the API. So once you get through all of that, there's the documentation. So head over to the documentation. This gives you a quick intro, how to get started with it. We need Node.js 18 or newer. So if you're on a command line, go ahead and check your Node version. Make sure you're running 18. Side tip, little pro tip: if you haven't installed Node before, if you're using Node, one of my favorite ways to manage versions of Node is using something called NVM, the Node Version Manager. Excellent project if you want to manage versions of Node. So if you have Node, npm install -g. This is for global. Anthropic AI/Claude Code. You navigate to the project that you're working on, and then you just type Claude, and it will dump you into there. We'll see that in an example today. So that's number one. You can go through, there are integrations with something like Model Context Protocol. We may dive into a little bit of that in a future video. If you're interested in that, let me know. I actually did this as part of my AI for Java developers course. We actually used a particular MCP server from Claude Code, so I showed an example of that. You can go down and look through a whole bunch of really good documentation. I just want to point out a couple of things, one of which is the interactive mode. So when we start Claude, we will just type Claude. So I just want to point out a couple of things, one of which is the CLI reference. So when you start Claude, you'll just type Claude and you'll be in that particular directory working with Claude Code. There are some CLI commands that you can pass to it. Maybe I wanted to start Claude with a query without having to jump in there and then type my query. If I just wanted to say, hey, explain this project to me you can do that. There are a whole bunch of things you can do with the CLI, some flags. This I would, not right away. Once you kind of get started and get used to using it, then go ahead and check these out to kind of customize it a little bit further. There are also these slash commands. So we're going to look at some of these slash commands today. We're not going to look at all of them, but these are pretty cool. And they're important when we get into like using Claude Code. So those are the kind of getting started things I would look at in the documentation if you want to get started with Claude Code. Also, a quick thing about slash commands. You can write your own custom slash commands, which gets really, really cool. So that's the documentation. So first off, my number one tip. I see a lot of comments out there like, hey, I'm trying to use Cursor or Windsurf or Claude Code or whatever to like generate this new Spring project. And maybe it's not up to date with like the latest and greatest and what you should do and what dependencies you should include. And the comments I've seen are like, hey, like the project that it's creating is not exactly what I would expect it to be. And so my number one tip here is to don't use AI to replace like your existing tools. We're using it as a pair programmer. So if I had somebody on my team and I said, go create a new Spring Boot project, they wouldn't write that from scratch. They wouldn't write out like the Maven Palm file and figure out all the dependencies needed and like try to construct that from scratch. We are using the tools that we're already used to using. So in this case, it's start.spring.io. I'm not going to ask Claude Code to create a new Spring Boot app from scratch. This is my home for doing that. So I'm going to do that here. So I'm going to say dev.danvega. We'll just call this code. I'm going to create a web app. What else do we want to do? I want to add the cache abstraction because we're going to do something with that. And I think that's really all I want to do with that. We're going to create a very simple app, but it's going to be a little bit fun because we're going to go through like a planning mode and then like figure out how to do it, right? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and generate this project. This is going to download a zip file. And then in that, I have this code folder. So to get started with this, I am going to open up a terminal. So iterm, and we'll cd downloads code. And so once we are in here, we can now go ahead and start a Claude Code session just by typing out Claude. So let's go ahead and type this out. And so this is the first really important thing to understand. Do you trust the files in this folder? Users, Vega, download code. Claude Code may read files in this folder. Reading untrusted files may lead Claude Code to behave in an unexpected way. So basically what we are saying here is that we are sandboxed to this folder. And this is really good. Pros, a lot of pros here, right? One, if you were to go over to a chatbot and ask it a question about your project, it's not going to know about it unless you kind of attach all of these files to it. Claude Code, because it has access to this entire folder structure, but nothing outside of it, really can start to understand your project. So that one, we'll see an example of this. One of the first things I say is like, explain this project to me. Like, what is it doing? And I think that's really important. And that's, again, I think a lot of these agentic IDEs kind of have that feature, but this is kind of the first feature for me. So I'm going to say yes. And then there's some tips for getting started. And these are, I think, important tips. So run init so init is a slash command to create a claude.md file with instructions for Claude. So this is really good. So I'm going to say /init, and it will go ahead and add that claude.md file to it, right? Let's see. So it's going to look, yep. Okay. So that was the first one. And then it says use Claude to help with file analysis, editing, bash commands, and Git. Be specific as you would with another engineer for best results. Again, prompt engineering is such an important skill, and it's about effectively communicating with a large language model, the same as you would with another engineer. So I love that. Run terminal setup to set up terminal integration. So there are some things you can do. So what is this doing? This is adding, so it's just adding some things. Yes, go ahead and create that. So that is our first thing. It actually went through and it said, okay, I got to create this claude.md file. Do I have permission to do that? What I love about this here is it's kind of come up with a plan and it has this checklist. Here's the things that I need to do. I need to analyze the code base and structure for architecture, check for an existing one, look for build, test, lint commands, create that file, check for README, look for cursor rules or Copilot instructions. That is another one of these things that kind of bothers me, right? So cursor, windsurf, Junie, Copilot, now Claude Code. We all have these different files for the instructions that we're going to guide. Okay, so that is step one. Now I'll add some like more custom instructions to that Claude MD file as we get into it. But let's go ahead and take a look at these slash commands. So if we just hit slash, there's a bunch of commands that we can run. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but again, these are in the documentation. If I want to add a new working directory, maybe I have like a backend, like some other folder that I need context about, I can go ahead and pull that in. Bug, clear, and compact. These are very important. So as I'm starting to have a conversation with Claude Code, you'll see it start to fill up with tokens. So again, I'm not going to get into this, but kind of the context window, you can think of it as like a piece of paper, right? Like I start writing a message on it. I start writing on this piece of paper and then I get an answer and the answer is written on this paper as well. There's only so much room on this piece of paper for text, right? And that is the context window. So as we start to fill this context window up and we have these longer conversations, if we can, we may want to compact that, which means kind of summarize that down so we're not filling up this context window, which means we're running out of tokens earlier. Oh, we can also clear it. We can just say, hey, get rid of it. I'm on to the next task. I don't need it. This is something you should be doing all the time. If you're kind of working on one thing, do that one thing, do it small, put it in a branch, then submit a PR, move on to the next thing, clear the conversation window. So you can do a config, you can do cost, you can like check out like what the cost is. Doctor, exit, hooks, IDE. So if we want to integrate with the IDE, we already saw a init. I did do an install GitHub app. So this sets up Claude GitHub Actions for a repository. You'll need to log in. So the first time you do this, you'll need to like log in to go ahead and use this. MCP, we can kind of manage MCP servers there. Model is a big one. So if I want to do model, I can go ahead and set the model that I want to use. So this is using Anthropic's models. And in this case, I'm going to use Sonnet. You can use Opus 4, but again, it kind of uses up usage rates. So I stick with Sonnet just for kind of everyday use. And mostly I'm using that on the front end chatbot as well. When I'm using Claude, I'm using Sonnet as well. So I set the model. So now we can go in and again, there are some things that you can go ahead and set: model, permissions, release notes, resume, terminal setup, upgrade, Vim, etc. So those are slash commands. And then what's really cool is you can go ahead and set up your own slash commands, which is really nice. And then there's that question mark. So you can see some shortcuts here. So for bash mode, for commands, file paths to memorize. You can even like drag and drop images into here to have it as context. If you want to paste like a large error message or some text, you can paste it right into here. It's a terminal, but I find it very, very useful. I've never been a huge use a terminal for everything, but this, it just feels like the right level for us developers. It feels like very at home for me. All right, so I said one of the first things you're gonna do is like not actually write any code. Maybe I just get dropped into a project. This is a really good tool for kind of code exploration, reading code, understanding a project. So can you please explain this project to me? So I'm basically asking it to explain the project, not write any code at this point, not help me plan out anything. I just want to understand this project. Now, this is a very simple project, so it's going to be really quick. But if it was a much more complex project, it would take a little time and kind of break everything down for you. This is a minimal Spring Boot web application project. It's using Spring Boot 3.5.3 and using Vega and Java 24. Here are the main components. Here are the dependencies. Here's the current state. And that really is all there is to it. But again, if there was more complex things going on, you could ask for like, hey, what are the entry points into this application? What does the configuration look like? What does the test coverage look like? You can do all sorts of things. And this is really what you should do if you get onboarding into a project or just starting to like look. Maybe you downloaded like an open source project off of GitHub and you know nothing about it, but you want to get like involved, and maybe you want to help write some documentation or fix a bug, this is a really good place to start. Start here, just asking questions about it. Don't write any code yet. Okay, so that's number one. So that's kind of our first step. Now I want to write some code. But again, I'm not just going to go in and just gung-ho start writing code, right? What I want to do is actually come up with a plan on how we're going to write this code. And in the real world, because this is a kind of minimal project, I'm not going to do it here. But one thing that I always kind of advise when you're using coding agents is make your tasks small and make sure that you are stashing these in a branch somewhere. So if I'm going to work on a project and I'm working on a new feature, I'm going to start with a branch, and you can ask Claude Code to help you with that, which it will, and it will commit this for you and submit PRs and all that stuff for you. But start with a branch because you don't want to mess up everything that's going on. Same way you would in a normal development lifecycle, right? So start with a branch and make your tasks minimal. Don't go here and say like, I want to vibe code the next great SaaS project that has been around for 20 years. Like, it's not going to happen that way, right? You can come up with a plan and then ask it to break it into certain tasks. And then those tasks can kind of go into a branch. So I keep mentioning the word plan. What am I talking about? So if you hit Shift Tab here, you can see that we are in auto accepts edits on. This is meaning like, hey, we're just going to go through and start coding, and it will ask you for permission to do certain things. But if we Shift Tab again, now we're in plan mode. Now we're in a mode where it's not just going to immediately start writing code. It's going to help us plan this out, right? So let's go ahead and plan this out. I'm going to say that I want to create an application that talks to the JSON placeholder service and retrieves to-dos, right? Let's do posts. I like posts and posts. Now, the posts don't change often, so I would like to cache them if we can. Okay, that's a simple, not a great prompt, but a good start. But the important thing here is, I think with prompt engineering, like you're asking it to do something, so you really want to get that prompt right. For this case, I'm not. Like, I'm going into a plan mode. And this is like me having a conversation with someone, maybe a junior developer, maybe a senior developer, right? Like any developer. I'm saying, here's what I want to do. Then the other developer might come back and go, maybe this is what we should do. And then I can look at that plan and go, okay, I like that, or I don't, let's change some things. So as I hit enter here, you'll see these tokens go. So these are all the tokens that we're going. And as it starts to run into permissions that it needs to use, it'll ask you. And you can say yes, yes, don't ask again, no, tell Claude what to do differently. So yes, I want to say it. And it's cool that kind of extracted that from that prompt, that it need to go out to the JSON placeholder service, see what posts look like. And it goes, okay, I know what posts look like. I know how to interact with that service now. Now let me come up with a plan for that. And again, you can see those tokens filling up that context window. Here's what I love. We get this really nice checklist. Okay, how do I do this? Well, I'm going to create a post model or a record class. I'm going to create a post service. It goes through there and then it stops. So now it comes up with a plan, right? So here's the plan for doing this. It's going to create a post record, which I like. Again, if I was in that auto accept mode, sometimes like I've done this before, it just like creates a class. Like I don't want a class. I want an immutable record in this case. It's going to place it in the dev.danvega code model package. Okay. This is where I have some things that can really fix this. So I have some guidelines for agents that I use, especially in a Spring Boot package or a Spring Boot project, that I would say like, okay, prefer package by feature, not package by layer. For this one, I'll leave it at that, but I will see if I can add that to the description or if you want to take a look at that. Then it says configure HTTP client and caching. Again, now it's saying add REST template bean configuration. I don't want to use the REST template. I want to use the REST client. Maybe we will go ahead and update this. So create post service, okay, add cacheable, cache all posts, cache individual. Cool, that's a good plan. Here's a REST control. I just want to get posts and post by ID. Add proper HTTP status. And testing. Test the endpoints manually. Verify. Here are the key features. So good. We've had this like initial conversation with what this project is going to look like. I don't want to do this. So you can say yes, auto accept edits, or yes, and manually approve edits, or no, keep planning. So what I'm going to do is say no, keep planning. And what I'm going to do is grab some of my guidelines. So let's do this. So copy. All right. And so I'll go into this Claude MD. So project overview, development commands. That helps it out. I'm going to paste some things in here that basically says like, hey, this is how I want things done. So this just talks about like project structure. It says like, hey, if you're going to talk to another service, favor the REST client over the REST template. Data access, I'm just kind of building out some demo applications. So unless I specifically ask for a database, don't use that. Just use some in-memory data and so on. So let's go back here and say I have updated the Claude.md with some instructions. Please revise your plan by taking them into consideration. Okay, so now it's going to go, okay, I have a plan, but now you see right away, read Claude.md. So it's going to read that and go, okay, now I have that as context. Let me kind of replan this out and how we are going to do that. So here's our updates. Create post packages following the package by feature structure. Love that. Use the post record. Use the REST client, not the REST template. Configure Spring Cache with enable caching. So now let's see what the plan looks like. But again, I hope you can see that this is a much better approach. This planning and trying to figure things out rather than vibe coding. Vibe coding, where you just kind of submit to whatever it's going to give you, is not a good plan, because what you'll end up doing is getting some things working, some not, and then you got to debug, and then you got to have this like iterative process on code. I'm having this iterative process on a plan before I write any code. And this is exactly what we do in software development, or what we should be doing, right? So here's the key decisions. Use the REST client, great. Use the REST client to talk to JSON placeholder service. Add enable caching. Use the controller advice for consistent exception handling. This is one of the things that was in my instructions or guidelines. Manual testing. Here's our expected file structure. So we have posts, everything related to that feature, which is posts, is in there. And then we have some common exceptions. We have a global exception. I am very happy with this plan, and I'm ready to move forward with it. So I am just going to say yes and auto accept edits. Again, if you are in a much larger project and this is a much larger task, create a branch, create smaller tasks, do those in a branch, submit those as PRs. In this case, very minimal project. So I'm just going to say yes and auto accept. So it's going to go through and you see these tokens start to pile up. And again, what I love is it kind of gives us this checklist and says, here are the things that I'm going to do. Okay, I need a bash command. I'm going to actually make this directory. Yes, don't ask me again for make directory commands again. I'm okay with you doing this. And there's also settings that you can kind of configure in your projects. Like if you're okay with it making directories all the time, you can put that in a settings file and say, yes, I don't need to be asked about that one. There's also a flag for the CLI. I can't remember what the flag is. It's in the documentation where you just say, hey, I don't really care. In this project, just don't ask me for anything. Just do your thing and do all, write all the code that you need, run all the commands that you need, because I know you're sandboxed to this particular environment. So you see it's going through configuring cache. It shows you the changes that you made. And I remember thinking about this, like, do I really, is a terminal agentic IDE something I want to use, or an agentic agent? And they've just done a really, really good job with Claude Code, and it's just a wonderful experience for me. So I'm seeing this. That said, I still have my IDE open. You saw IntelliJ, right? And you can use this right inside of IntelliJ. I'll show you an example of that. But as you can see, it's going to go down and it's going to go through its checklist. And then at the end, what it'll do, it'll actually run the command like, hey, let me run a build and see if I've messed anything up. And if it doesn't, it go, okay, this is great, ready to go for you. If it does mess something up and it runs a build and some error comes back, it will go, oh, I need to fix that. And then it'll look at the build output and go ahead and fix those things. So again, this is not a paid sponsor, although Claude, I'm always open to sponsors. I just really enjoy this workflow. I've used other tools before. I haven't used Cursor, but I've seen videos on it. I've used something like Windsurf. I used something like Junie, and I feel like sometimes they just kind of get in the way and they're slow and clunky. This doesn't feel that way to me. So now you see it's done. I'm going to test the application. Yes, I want you to test the application. So it's running those tests, seeing if they all pass. If they all pass, we're good to go. And if it doesn't, then it will say, okay, what do I need to adjust? Did I write a bad test? In that case, it looks like something unsafe is called. I don't know what it was doing. Updated the post service. Okay, now it's going to run it. So yes, I want you to run this. And it's basically going to run it to see if it starts. It did. And because it started, I think it's going to say, okay, everything is good to go here. All right, something's going on here. So it's running curl against, it just wants to see if it can test that out. Yep, got a user ID back. So I don't even need to like show you this working because it's actually testing this out. So it's running, it ran a curl command against localhost 8080/API/posts. And there it goes, it got a user ID of 1. It's going to run this again. So now it's just going to test out a user ID of 1. Perfect. This is one that should be non-existent. So it's going to test that out. And so it's pretty cool. It ran all of the tests, which we have some tests in there for that kind of stuff. But it's also doing like an actual kind of real world test, right? It's starting up the server. More of an integration test, but like real from the command line here. Yes, go ahead and proceed. And so it's trying to get what is the HTTP status code, probably a 404 here. Hopefully it gets that. Yes. Cool. So test the application. Oh, test the application manually. It didn't write tests. The previous one was write the integration test. The last one was test it manually. I love that. And I think that's really awesome. So then when you're done, you get this nice kind of summary. And the implementation follows the guidelines from Claude.md. Again, this is so important. You can have one Claude.md that kind of pulls some documentation or says, hey, if you're using Spring AI, go use this updated documentation here. You can get really creative with this. You can be very concise, real creative. Again, this gets added to the context window, so don't get too exhaustive with this. Key features, here are all the things that we did. Here are the API endpoints. We have some tests, they all test, ready to go. I love this. So back over in the IDE, if I go look at this, I can see that I have posts. And if I go to post, I have a post class. I have a post controller. Code looks pretty good to me. If you had a different style of how you write endpoints, you can go ahead and put this in your guidelines and it'll write code to that specific guideline. So I have a post service. I'm using the REST client now. I go off to the REST client, I get posts, and then we're also using the cacheable annotation because once I have this, I don't need to go back out to the JSON placeholder service. That data doesn't change. So we'll just go ahead and cache this. There's also a global exception handler, which is nice. If we go into the main app, we have an enable caching, which enables the cache support. And then we have a bean. So we set up a REST client that can be used anywhere in the application. So if we added something like to-dos, it would work there, but it sets it up with a base URL. And now we can use that REST client in any class. So this is pretty much the code that I would be writing. And this is a really good place to get up and running with. I thought this does a really good job. Again, I think the things for me that make it really nice, it's a nice interactive experience. I think it's very fast in most situations. I think it's affordable because, again, if you're on a pro plan, it's $20. If I was writing code 10 hours a day, I would pay the $200. Like, that's how helpful it is to me. And then if you want to use it here in the IDE, I have a little integration here. So it just jumps in here and that actually starts Claude and drops you into this particular shell. So I can use it right within my IDE, which is really nice as well. So this will allow you to say like, hey, at post controller, right? Now I can go ahead and ask questions about this post controller that are specific to that. So yeah, just a big fan of this tool. I've been using it a lot more lately, and I'm really enjoying it. So that's it. Claude Code, your terminal-based agent that will help you be more productive as a developer. I'm really liking it. We really just kind of scratched the surface. If you want to dive in a little bit deeper, if you want to talk about like adding MCP servers, if you want to talk about building your own / commands, I would love to dive deeper in this. Let me know if that's something you want. I also want to know from you, what tools are you using in your day-to-day workflow? Is Claude Code part of that? If it is, what do you find really useful about Claude Code? Because I'm still at the beginning of this, just like all of us, right? Like I've been probably using this for a couple months now, but man, I found it really useful. And thank you to the team over at Anthropic. Big fan of this, and I can only see it getting better and better. I know I see the project managers out on Twitter constantly updating this, new features. There's a lot to go through. So I'm excited about the future of this tool. I had a lot of fun putting this together today, friends. If you learned something new today, do me a big favor. Leave me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Happy coding, friends.